Organic garden update, September 2020. I've acquired a fig plant. I already have some Dakota squash. This is an heirloom variety. I've already started some cleanup. These are hostas that spent themselves blooming, probably July. So I just cut them down and leave them where they are, and it becomes green manure. There's still some color in the garden. Nasturtium. The roses seem to be having probably their fourth bloom this year. Fall mums for some fall color. Ornamental gourds that grew on their own out of the compost that I added to some flowers in the flower garden. I've got pumpkins and tomatoes. Those are called Abraham Lincoln, and I don't know what that bug is. I tried to do an identification on my Seek app. I'm going to have to look it up. It looks like an aphid type, but they don't seem to harm anything. If anything, I think they're predator bugs. There's another one. The garden just burst at its seams this year. This is a cooking pumpkin. It's a sweet sugar pumpkin. Not your typical, but it's another heirloom variety. More pumpkins. And whatever cucumbers didn't make it, that's a little too big for me. So it'll stay there and it'll fertilize. Peppers did pretty good this year. I had corn, but I had to throw it all away because the chipmunks got it. The chipmunks have been terrible. And if you don't get them in the spring, then you're not going to get them at all. So I have to wait until next spring. So these two rows right here were replanted with beans and lettuce. And I'm going to clean them out again right now because I want to put up my hoop housing and try to keep the rabbits out and get some lettuce going for the fall. A real surprise. This is a pepper that I probably put in back in June and never made it to adulthood. Looks like maybe the baby bunnies took a bite out of it, but it's in one of the rows that I'm going to add hoop housing to. So I'm going to leave it there because even if the nights stay cool, and they've got to be at least in the 50s to do the hoop houses, that thing should probably make out just fine. These are my 3 bean rows, and I had a couple of baby bunnies in here, and when they came out, look at what they did to my beans. But I was able to get about 4 or 5 pickings out of these, so I'm not too upset by that. These are purple beans. So I'm going to get these 2 rows cleaned out. Get the potato plants out of the way, which seem to have succumbed to a potato beetle, but I just looked underground and it looks like we might have done okay. I've never planted potatoes in this garden before. We got a bunch of little ones. This was the no dig method. We've got critters, probably the chipmunks. I wouldn't doubt it. Chipmunks and rabbits have been terrible this year. I usually have a problem with the groundhogs, and they can decimate an entire garden in one afternoon, but usually with a groundhog you just shoot them, or you trap them and you shoot them. So these are the old purple beans and some weeds that I'm pulling out that the rabbits got a hold of. It looks like a great big mess, but believe it or not, this was a very bounteous garden this year. I've been eating out of this the whole time, and I haven't had to buy anything from the supermarket, which is my aim, and that's why I want to get some of these open rows set up for hoop houses so that I can extend the season as long as I can. When I lived upstate, probably 100 miles north of here, it was considered the snow belt, and I wanted to grow broccoli in the winter. So I built some hoop houses and went to the farm, and I got a whole bunch of straw, as much as I could get, and bedding. And I used leaves from the yard and clippings from the lawnmower. And I put the hoop houses in and just covered the sides. Not the whole thing because you want the sunlight to come in, but just covered the sides. I covered the hoop houses were probably about this tall. And then I just covered up the sides of them, left the tops open along the ridge so that I could, let the plants get some sunlight. And I grew full heads of broccoli, and I think they were ready around January, and I had to go out and brush the snow off the hoop houses, but I still got broccoli. I'm getting some fence posts put back into the ground. These were actually knocked over back in August from the hurricane that came through. I mean, we just live at the end of a wind tunnel in this neck of the woods, so I have to dig out the holes with my handy dandy wrecking bar that I found on the road. It's a great tool, and I just use, this is a sapling from a maple, and that's all I've ever used. And yes, they will rot, but they take a very, very long time to do so. They're straight up and down, and they will shed the weather. When they start to rot at the bottom, like these did, there were 3 of them here that fell out. Just past that pumpkin is another one, and that's why they gave loose, because these have probably been in here, I would say, almost 10 years at that size. So when they rot off at the bottom and they fall out, I just reuse them if they're tall enough to support the fence. And that's that. Look at all the pumpkins out there. Pumpkins are great, I think, fried or baked with lots of butter and maybe some bacon fat and some brown sugar. This is the hardest part of the garden for me, redigging the fence post holes. And it's the worst part of using the maple saplings. But once you get it deep enough, I usually measure a depthness from my fingertips to my elbow. And that's enough to keep it from faltering, even in the heaviest, nastiest snowfall. And they've always done very well. So once I get past this point, and I can measure right up to my elbow, then I can just throw everything back in there, rocks and all, jam it all down with the wrecking bar, and I'm all set. Oh my God, is anybody else sick and tired of the heat this summer and the humidity? At least today we have a nice breeze, but I tell you what, I can definitely say goodbye to this summer. It's been rough. So that's what I do. And then I just try to pack it in, fill in the empty spaces, and this is good, hopefully, for many years. I have never had these maple sapling posts fail me, except for when they start to reach about the age of 10. So that's 1 down, and, oh, 2 down. What am I saying? There's another one. And I think I might wait on that one over there because it's kind of involved with that pumpkin vine. And it's not an absolute emergency. I wanted to get these 2 done because I wanted it to support the fence right around where I'm about to put my row housing, or my, my row housing in. The white that you see, in case you're wondering, they're all eggshells. A lot of egg eaters around here. My neighbors contribute to the compost, so that's why it looks like that. So let me show you how I make my hoop houses. It's very, very simple. I just took some fencing, same fencing that I have around the garden, and I measured it off by footsteps, and then I took my bolt cutters and I just cut it. And then I went online and I ordered this great row cover fabric, and it'll keep the snow off. It'll let some cold moisture through, but I've never had this fail ever. And we had a snowstorm back in May, and I had some tenders in the garden. Well, actually the lettuces and such, arugula, things like that, they're real tough in the cold. But for snow to hit it, and we got, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch to an inch, that would be enough to kill off those plants. And although this fabric does breathe and it lets through moisture, it did not compromise the health of those plants. In fact, if anything, They thrived. So now in the winter, well, if I make it through the winter with this, and that's what my plan is, I'm hoping to extend this. I have plastic to go over these to replace the fabric with, but right now it's still in the 70s during the day. Even if it gets warm, like June, July, I still had some of these on because I was nurturing some pepper plants, and they love the heat. So what I'll do is, when it starts to really get cold, I'm going to have to get some more straw, lots of straw, because I also need to mulch down some of these leaves. But the most important thing is to cover the ends of these 4 corners and just mulch them up, and it helps build up heat in the soil. And when the sun hits it during the day, it builds up more heat. You got a nice little greenhouse. Nice, simple idea, inexpensive. I think the most expensive thing was probably the roll of fence, which was a roll of fence that I probably bought nearly 10 or more years ago. So, you know, you can get an awful lot out of the things that you save. Hang on to stuff. I don't suggest being a hoarder, but don't throw things away. So these things are awesome. Try them. Very easy to get this fabric. I'm not sure what the company was. It was on Amazon, and the plastic that I'll be putting on, probably when the temperature at night gets down around the high 30s, that's when I'll put the plastic on. Although this will hold up throughout the entire winter, but I want a really strong heat concentration during the day, and the plastic will do that. I had plastic on, March this year, and we got tons and tons of lettuce, butter crunch, and you name it, all kinds. And yeah, and the plastic I got from Tractor Supply, it's 4mm agricultural grade plastic, and they seem to have it all the time, so it wouldn't be too hard to get a hold of. So if you want to extend your season, I tell you what, this has been fail-safe for me. It's a great idea. It works very well.